Okay, sorry.
According to budget numbers, for every $1 our government spends on education, $9.75 are spent on defense and manufacturing weapons of mass destruction. In other words, we spend 10 times the budget on defense as on education. Does this proportion express your value system? What ratio of education to defense would you like to see?
Well, I don't know that I like to look at just ratios on that subject, but the cost of the Defense Department, it's not 10 times more. It's probably 100 times more because if you talk about the poison industry in the United States, the Defense Department, which is interesting, we call it the Defense Department, but they have been responsible for contaminating every organ of every tissue and every human being on the planet in one generation. I don't call that defense. I call that offense. And none of this is factored into the cost of the Defense Department. It's costing trillions of dollars of healthcare costs and dreaded diseases that are not factored into the cost of the Defense Department. So, yeah, the whole system is out of control and out of whack. And what we really talk about in our Defense Department that most people don't seem to understand is that the oil companies use our Defense Department, if you will, our Army, our Navy, and Air Force, to go into foreign countries like Iraq and Iran and Egypt to put in puppet governments so that those mineral extraction companies can go in and steal the resources from their countries and give it to the oil companies. This is what is the problem. This is why people don't like the way we do foreign policy. It's based on corporations ruling, and that is counterproductive to the interests of the American people. We should have our government representing the majority of citizens and not the financial interests of oil companies and mineral extraction companies. You want to know why we're in Afghanistan? It's because there's $1 trillion of minerals there. And the mineral extraction companies would love to go in.
As a follow-up to that question,
Okay.
if you were to compare education to defense on your platform, why don't you tell me where your value system lies on education?
Well, I can tell you it's not. I don't consider making weapons of mass destruction so you can annihilate everything on the earth very quickly is a good investment. I think that's a terrible thing to be doing. And so I certainly would like to convince the majority of American people, if I have the opportunity, that we should not be doing that. Now, as I've mentioned, I don't think there's any corollary between money and education, however. We spend more money on education than any of our competitors do in other countries, and they produce far higher results for far less money than we get in this country. All we're interested in this country, apparently, is pushing profits of corporations. That's what we value more than anything. And if we're screwing millions of college students over in order to make bankers and corporations rich, that seems to be the only thing we care about. And gee, could it be because they hire thousands of lobbyists to go in and bribe every member of Congress to get what they want? And I think it is the problem. And that problem will not be solved if we don't pass that 28th Amendment to put the majority of citizens in charge of the Congress, so they would no longer be able to legally take bribes. They would be arrested and put in prison, which is where they should be for being bribed. But we live not in a democracy, but in a republican form of government. It's called a republic. And that means bribery at the core. It's always been that way from the day our republic was founded some 230 years ago.
Okay.
It's been that way. It always will be that way.
Okay.
The rules of the game.